I'm so grateful to all the guests who joined me on the podcast this year. This episode is dedicated to them. If you haven't already heard these wonderful interviews, you're going to want to listen in and add them to your playlist. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome to the Connect podcast. This show is all about helping you connect to your soul's calling so you can take action on it. Because the sweetest success is a blend of discovering your purpose with the inner drive to bring it to life. I'm Sheila, health coach, lifestyle entrepreneur, and mom of two, best known for my online wellness programs, mentoring, and self-love passion. Listen in for inspiring interviews, solo chats, and Q&A sessions that will move you past overwhelm towards what lights you up. Stop accepting good enough and go for your version of great in your health, business, and relationships. Let's get started. Hi, welcome to this special edition of the podcast. I hope you've been enjoying your holiday, and I hope that you've had time to really take space for yourself. And in that time, catch up on the things that are important to you, whether it's books that you're reading or even podcast episodes that you have been meaning to listen to. I want to say a special thank you to you for listening into the podcast this year. And if this is your first time listening, this is a great opportunity for you to hear about some of the guests that I've had on the show over the last year. And so I'm going to go through each one, share just a highlight of each, what each one is about, and you can go back and have a listen at your leisure. There's some beautiful stories, and they're all in the same vein of me wanting to share stories of people discovering and uncovering what their purpose is and the windy, twisty road that got them to where they are today. And then, of course, also those people who are still continuing to grow and change on their journey, because every day, every year is so different. We have so much to learn from these stories and from each other. So we're going to start with episode 41, Carrie Montgomery, Embracing Your Soul Style. She says, it's really about finding your elegant, true, external essence, but it's the internal vision you're living into. What does that look like and feel like inside your body? She is a transformational style coach and body image expert, and she's worked with big stars along with a lot of work in design, marketing, and wellness. And hearing her story was really empowering because it shows how you can shift through many different careers and you can still keep growing and evolving based on all that you have learned along the journey. So in this episode, we talk about how Carrie's travels and work in diverse fields led her to her current work, where her passion for wellness comes from, finding your authentic voice and style, what led her to move to Ibiza, Spain, and how style is more than what is on the exterior. There's so much to her story that can help you as you're entering into a new year, if you're looking to redefine what your life and your work looks like, if you have branding that you're wanting to shift, because it's all dealing with what comes from within yourself and how you can express that on the outside. So grateful, Carrie. Loved our conversation. Episode 45 was with author Melanie Stevenson, entitled Creativity for Impact. She says, I hope my books ignite something in someone and help them to think in a deeper way about something than they ever have before, or even be a healing balm to them. And now Melanie and I have been friends for 2 decades, and her love of the arts, of painting, and of writing have always inspired me, which is why I wanted to share her story. She wrote a book called One More Tomorrow that was published in September 2019, and then is now in the midst of publishing her second book, which I'm going to have her on the show again. But you got to listen to her story because it's really beautiful to hear how her first novel began and how she wrote it while homeschooling her 4 kids. We also talked about how Melanie's faith informs on her writing and her devotional series, the self-care that nourishes her in her busy life, and the impact and awareness she hopes her third novel will make for women and girls worldwide. So go back and listen to that. You're going to love it. Thanks so much, Melanie, for joining me. Episode 49 with Anne Mahler was entitled Acting, Singing, and Unlocking Your Heart. And Anne says, we need to be coming home to our hearts over and over again. That's my deep conviction. Anne is someone I've gotten to know over the last several years. She is such a beautiful, multi-passionate, creative person, and she inspires me so much to allow for all the different elements of my creativity to come through and not just to be so linear in my thinking. And she's really driven by her soul leading her. In this episode, you're going to hear us talk about thriving in a multi-passionate creative business, cultivating unity within a polarized world, identifying, trusting, and growing into your unique gifts, navigating open-hearted living with supportive boundaries, re-envisioning the stories being told on stage and screen. And Anne has some beautiful offerings she's putting out into the world. So as you listen, you'll know how to connect with her as well. Anne, I appreciate you. It's been such a blessing being in connection this year, especially. Thanks for being on the show. Episode 53 was with Willimaine Moss, and it was entitled From Burnout to Clarity and Thriving. She says, we need entrepreneurs who can make a difference. Willimaine shares in this episode the link between the career she didn't pursue and her current business, which she is an online business manager, and she does a lot of beautiful work for online entrepreneurs. Her past career was in the medical field. So it's so interesting hearing that transition that she made and how it continues to inform on her life. We talk about trusting your intuition in your decision-making, what the effects of burnout can look like, and how often there isn't a warning sign. We talk about how to have grace on yourself as you heal and pivot, simply daily practices to grounding yourself and finding clarity, and the synergistic way Willimaine's business began and grew quickly. Willimaine, thanks for sharing your personal story about burnout and recovery. I know that it's helping so many people. I appreciate you. Episode 57 with Eric Bolton was entitled Share Music, Share Life. And Eric says, I've felt for the majority of my life that gratitude and thankfulness really are the key to peace, joy, and happiness in life. Eric is a Canadian performing singer-songwriter and entrepreneur. He owns the music school and studio eBolt Music in Cambridge, Ontario, and also partners with Skytrack Studios to provide one of the top recording facilities in the Waterloo region of Canada. He is also the leading member of Ontario rock band Shy Harry. And we met through his music studio with my son playing guitar, and it's been such a joy getting to know him. We talked all about his musical roots, songwriting, his love of growing community, and what life has been like during a time where live performance hit pause. We also talked about the origin of two of his songs that represent major milestones in his life and being true to who he is. He even performed the two songs acoustically. So go back and listen to this. You're going to love how Eric shows up. He's just such a wonderful person, and it's been such a gift getting to know you, Eric. Thanks for being on the show. Episode 61 with Dr. Lidiana Garcia, entitled Supporting Your Mental Health, was the start of my conversations with other mental health professionals and people who specialize in working with people who have anxiety. And Lidiana says, you are not defined by what happened to you. I find that is such a powerful quote, and I return to it regularly because so many of us are experiencing a lot in our lives, and we can so easily get stuck in what has happened in the past. So I appreciate how we talked about her story of entering into life as a mental health professional, the amazing village of strong women in which she was raised, how her dream led her from Puerto Rico to Los Angeles, mental health stigmas, past and present, the impacts of immigration and the pandemic on individuals and families, my family's experience with mental health challenges, what work looks like while raising a young family, and of course, Lidiana's self-care for rejuvenation. Thanks for joining me on the show, Dr. Lidiana, and I look forward to hearing more about the work you're doing and sharing it. Episode 65 with Scott A. McMillan, entitled From Entrepreneur to Author, was so much fun as we entered the field of publishing and getting your work out there in the written form. Scott says getting your strategy right from the outset is going to help write a book that achieves the goals you want to achieve. Scott is an author, entrepreneur, speaker, and president and executive publisher at Grammar Factory Publishing, a Canadian professional service provider that helps entrepreneurs write and publish books that build authority and grow their business. And so he spent 20 years in media and strategy, worked with Rogers Media, and he is a friend of mine from high school, actually. So it's so fun catching up, but also talking about the work that he does. In this episode, you're going to hear about reimagining careers, fatherhood, entrepreneurship, and being an author, how to stay grounded, and the journey of writing his new book, Entrepreneur to Author, 5 Steps to Writing and Publishing a Nonfiction Book That Builds Authority and Grows Your Business. It was so insightful hearing your journey through various types of businesses to get to where you are now, Scott. And mostly, I love hearing how you show up in your family and how you're so rooted in being there for them. It was really inspirational for me. I really appreciate you being here. Episode 69 with Jenny Hulbert, entitled Wild Wellness, was when I felt like I was introduced to another soul sister in the wellness space. Jenny says, it's not a sprint for nature, it's a cycle. And of course, I so appreciate anything talking about cycles and seasons because it's so much a part of the work that I do. Jenny has a Bachelor of Science and Master's degree in exercise science and sports psychology and is a wellness advocate teaching women to live and sweat in sync with nature. She believes you can reach your goals without sacrificing your well-being as you seek to embody what nature has always modeled. In this episode, we talked about the gifts of growing up on a farm in Ohio, what led Jenny into her work in the health and fitness world, what exercising cyclically can look like, the 2 sides to treating anxiety with fitness, and powerful questions to ask yourself as you make change in your life. It was such an enjoyable conversation, Jenny. I appreciate the work you do. It's been so great being in touch as well through this time. We get to encourage each other in the work we're doing, and it's just so fun to cheerlead each other. Thanks for joining me on the show. Episode 73 with Dr. Ellen Wong, entitled From High Functioning Anxiety to a Healthier, Happier You, was where we talked about success and how it can impact our mental health. Ellen says, prioritize your health and happiness as much as your success. After years of living with high-functioning anxiety herself, Dr. Wong eventually reached a tipping point after 2 hospitalizations related to burning out. Although she appeared like she had it all together, she secretly lived with never-ending mental chatter that left her feeling overwhelmed, anxious, exhausted, and unhappy. And so this is when all the shifts happened for her. And now as a naturopathic doctor, a self-talk transformologist, and founder of the Joy Avenue, Ellen works with women who are tired of feeling anxious and overwhelmed and guides them towards feeling calm and confident. In this episode, we talked about how she navigated living from anxiety and burnout to guiding women to healing, her childhood and cultural impacts, and how we all view our self-worth, working from home while mothering her newborn in a pandemic, and epigenetics and the importance of self-talk and mental health. I learned so much from this episode, and I continue to learn as I follow your work, Ellen. It's a joy to know you. Episode 77 with Monica LeBaron, entitled Yoga Therapy, Meditation, and Self-Care, was where I dove in with a yoga therapist and neuromuscular body alignment expert who trained with renowned neuromuscular therapist Lee Albert and graduated with honors from her MBA. And her story is so interesting. And Monica says, giving yourself credit for your small and big wins and taking time for self-healing and self-love is so important to being the best version of yourself. Monica helps busy women simplify their wellness so they can sleep better and have more energy to enjoy life. And if you're listening to this podcast, I know that's important to most of you. And I loved hearing her story about traveling as well, because she lived a lot of different places. She's lived and worked in both Sweden and China, where she started her entrepreneurial journey, now runs her business remotely while traveling the world from Mexico and getting her beauty sleep. In this episode, we talked about trusting yourself and taking steps towards your dreams, Monica's journey from MBA to yoga therapist, the elevated need for self-care in current times, and simple ways to love yourself more. Monica, you are always such an encouragement wherever you go. And anytime we're in touch, much. I really feel just a sense of calm and peace. So thanks for sharing that with the world. Great to have you here. Episode 81 with painter Alana Peters, entitled Creativity and Doing What You Love Now, was super fun for me because Alana is a longtime family friend. And it's so interesting how when you connect with someone who you've known for so many years, but you actually interview them and ask them questions, you get to know them on an even deeper level. Alana says, I realized that I needed to do what I loved. It kind of clicked for me. If you don't do it now, you won't do it. So Alana is a Toronto-based painter and educator. Her work is predominantly figurative oil painting on birch wood panels. She was born and raised in Ottawa, Canada, and as a young adult moved around Canada, England, France, Guyana, and Burkina Faso before coming to Toronto in 2010. She has so much beautiful work. You need to follow her to see it on Instagram. And when you go to this show, you'll see her linked in the show notes. In this episode, you're going to hear about the power of giving children freedom to explore, to develop creativity, encouragement and healing elements of experimenting with art, how art is a form of self-care, and how to embrace your unique style, and it will translate into other areas of your life. Alana, as always, such a joy to be in touch and to see all the work you're doing. And I know if you're listening to this, you're having a wonderful unplugged time with your family. Looking forward to connecting in the new year. Episode 85 with Kimberly Nicole Smith, entitled Being a Tenacious Rose, shed light on the depths of what we can withstand and grow through and the power of our human spirit. Kimberly says, the rose is delicate, beautiful, and people don't think it would be able to withstand some of the things it goes through, like the human spirit. But you can still move through the very hard things in life. I am the rose. This is our concrete. These are my damaged petals, but you still rise to reach the light. As a visionary creator and storytelling educator, Kimberly Nicole Smith's entrepreneurial approach challenges perspectives that reinforce the status quo and leans toward the discovery of possibilities. Her work combines the arts and public health, showing that the arts are so important to the well-being of people in a community to change policy and to change the world. We talked about the moving story behind her becoming the Tenacious Rose, the connection between social and emotional well-being, the benefits of being vulnerable with a close circle, how the arts can change communities and change the world, and self-care with a growing business and family, as well as asking for help. Kimberly, I love our conversations. I love your energy and the light that you put out into the world. Thanks for joining me. Episode 89 with Angela Accomando, entitled End the Hustle, spoke to my heart, and Angela says, I am on a mission to get as many people as I can to slow down. What have I been talking about so much on this show? Hello, Angela and I are totally on the same page about this. Angela is a burnout coach, the host of End the Hustle podcast, and an advocate for victims of domestic violence. In fact, in 2019, she had a law passed to better help victims of domestic violence report crimes against them. Her own story of overcoming domestic violence is used in the NFL's domestic violence and sexual assault education program for players. And our conversation covered so many things that are what we experience in our lives, that where the world tells us we need to be go, go, go all the time, and what it can look like on the other side of it. And the beautiful thing is, if you follow Angela on social media, you'll see she exemplifies her work. She works hard and she works purposefully, but she also builds in periods of rest, and she makes that a part of her moment by moment, day by day way of life. So thank you for leading the way, Angela. Grateful you could be here. Episode 93 was with Alexandra Raquel Hughes, entitled The Sacred Pause. Alexandra says, mothers who really care about raising this new conscious generation, tied and woven into that is this drive to make the world a better place. I've found that when you really honor your own sacred pause, it's a way of integrating those two. Alexandra is a certified energy healer and feminine leadership coach, and she works with smart, spiritually curious moms who are big-hearted and ambitious in their mission to make the world a better place. She's a Peruvian-Canadian expat mom of 3 who's lived in 8 countries, speaks 4 languages, and has an international multidisciplinary academic background that includes a master's in philosophy and development studies from the UK and a BA in environmental studies from Canada. In fact, she grew up in Ottawa, where I grew up, and ended up going to the same school that years before my mother had attended. She's recently moved from Brazil back to Toronto, and she is loving promoting the value of the sacred pause and the feminine. Continuing these stories, Alexandra has started her own podcast, and it's very deeply tied to the sacred feminine. She's entitled it Witch Hunt Podcast. You can go check it out. The trailer and the first episode is up right now, and it ties in so well to our conversation because I often wonder how my life would have looked if I had lived back in the 1800s, 1700s, 1500s, working with women and their wellness. It's so interesting watching you grow into this work, Alexandra. Thanks for being on my show, and congratulations on your new podcast. Episode 97 with Ruth Poundwhite was entitled Growing a Quietly Ambitious Business. Ruth says, I believe that business should support our life and values. And for me, that means honoring who I am, what I believe in, and what I enjoy without sacrificing income. Ruth is quietly ambitious, and she's a business coach and feminist marketer who supports highly sensitive humans to scale their businesses without sacrificing who they are. And she also has her new book, Quietly Ambitious, that is out talking about her journey, talking about what this can look like for you. And it's so refreshing hearing her share what her story was and how she helps others to navigate the world in spite of what many people in a marketing culture can deem so important to be out there all the time and super extroverted, because truly we're all a mixture of introverts and extroverts. So I really appreciated hearing your story, Ruth, and congratulations on your book. Thanks for joining me on the show. Episode 113 with Samantha Touche was entitled Capturing Your Potential. And she says, when you tap into whatever is meaningful to you and you focus on that first, then people pick up on the joy and the energy change it brings. Samantha is an author and a business and mindset coach helping women create and enjoy successful businesses. She has over 20 years of marketing and strategy experience working for large international companies, but it was her love of how the mind works and how to create the right mindset for success that led her into coaching. And we talked about her journey from corporate life to designing her own business, her many travels, which I always love talking about where people have traveled to, motherhood. It's quite a touching story that she shares, actually, her motherhood journey. And I invite you to really tune into this for that conversation. And also helping women discover their version of success in life. So again, all of these elements that I love to share on the podcast about transformation, about finding your purpose, about finding what true success is for you, and connecting to that from deep within are all covered in this conversation. Samantha, thank you for joining me to share your story. Episode 117 with Suzette Allen, entitled Designing a Roadmap for Your Business, was wonderful as I got to know someone who's a local from the Toronto area who has pivoted and shifted in her businesses during a time where the world really changed. Sue says, we get so caught up in chasing our goals that we don't celebrate the wins. I'm big on celebrating those because it's the small wins that allow you to get to the big ones. And Suzette Allen is also known on Instagram as at Sue Knows Business, so go look her up. We talked about her journey from a previous career to becoming a business owner, the way her business plan evolved since she began entrepreneurship, how she successfully pivoted her services during 2020 to meet a growing demand, business systems resources from Canada, how to curate your business life to enrich your family connection and health, and her favorite self-care rituals. Sue, thanks so much for joining me on the show. Episode 121 with Andrea Berg, entitled Creating Impact in Life and Business with Human Design, was so eye-opening and fun because while I knew a little bit about human design before, Andrea really explained it so well to me. Andrea says, human design can really be applied to any area of your experience. It's about learning the way that your energy works most effectively. We talked about why she shifted from a successful corporate career to consulting, what led her to using human design in her coaching, what is human design and how it can be applied to different areas of life, some real life examples, what women she's worked with tend to struggle with, and some solutions, as well as self-care that is lighting her up. And right now, Andrea has just welcomed a new child into the world, her second, and it's been fun to follow her journey and to get to know her better as a result of this conversation. So Andrea, congratulations again, and thanks so much for being here to share your wealth of wisdom with us on the show. Episode 123 with Kate Northrup, entitled Growing a Regenerative Business While Doing Less, shares a revolutionary way of living and working. Kate says, it's not that our businesses don't require work, but when having a clear focus, we can work less and achieve more. She's a best-selling author of Do Less and Money, a Love Story, CEO of The Origin Company, and a regenerative business researcher. Her whole purpose is to explore and share how we can be more relaxed while making the impact we were meant to, with the idea of making a life, not just a living. And I love her motto that has become a very favorite one of mine: body first, business second. In this interview, we talked about releasing patriarchal stress, healing your nervous system, how she's modeling cyclical living for her daughters, how networking played such a vital role in her success, and how you can tap into it virtually to benefit as well. I'm so grateful to be a part of the Origin membership that she launched back in 2017. And in it, she has a beautiful faculty and other guest contributors who come in to talk about living life on purpose while doing less. Kate, I want to say thank you for your mentorship and your guidance for all of us who want to do life in a different way. You're really doing incredible things in the world, and I'm grateful for you. Thanks for being on the show. Episode 127 with Christine Baird was entitled Owning Your True Worth. Christine says, any which way you cut it, I'm here for the podcast because the intimacy and the vulnerability and the safe space to tell your story is so profound. In listening to people tell their stories, you learn how to listen to another human's experience and see yourself in it. I think that's a skill we're losing and we desperately need in society. Christine Baird is a podcast consultant, host, and producer who teaches creators how to attract their dream customers through the power of their voice. After 6 years in corporate sales, Christine did a career 180 and has been working in podcasting, event production, and influencer branding since 2014. She worked on Lewis Howes' brand, The School of Greatness, for 4 years, where she helped grow his top-ranked podcast from less than 1 million downloads to now over 80 million. It was a wonderful conversation where we talked about things she's learned when entering the transformation space, what it's like to trust your intuition, how her faith guided her career pivot, what working with the most successful people in the world taught her about self-worth, and how you can rediscover your self-worth. It was wonderful getting to know you, Christine. Thanks for being on the show and sharing your journey with us. Episode 133 with Natasha Pennycook, entitled Changing the Face of Mental Health, was very insightful. Natasha says, I firmly believe whenever we speak our mental health challenges and struggles, we validate our experiences, can focus on our skills and strengths, and can give ourselves permission to overcome adversity. Natasha is an award-winning psychotherapist, international speaker, and clinical consultant. And she's also founding member of the Association of Black Psychologists, Toronto chapter, assists on the advisory board of Cujo's Kids Zone, and is a contributing author for Black Love Online magazine. And of course, is also the current recipient of the By Blacks People's Choice Award for Best Canadian Counselor of 2020. We had such a deep conversation talking about what intersectionality and representation looks like for people of color, the gifts of receiving higher education in the Caribbean, the stigma surrounding mental health, her take on prioritizing self-care, what decolonizing and dismantling patriarchy can look like, how to elevate in your career by collaborating with other successful women, and her role as a mentor to those coming up in the mental health field. I learned so much from you in this conversation, Natasha, and I look forward to continuing to follow your work and to share it. Thanks for joining me. The final interview I did this year is episode 137 with Dwight Ballantyne, entitled We See You. Indigenous First Nations youth in Canada. Dwight says, youth living in remote Indigenous communities deserve the same choices as every other Canadian. We believe our connection and sharing We See You with these youth helps them believe in more than just words in a textbook. Dwight Ballantyne grew up in Montreal Lake Cree Nation, a remote North Saskatchewan First Nation, until the age of 21. He always felt like he was invisible to the rest of the world. When a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to move to BC presented itself in 2016, he took a leap of faith and left everything he knew behind. By 2019, he founded the Ballantyne Project with the goal of raising awareness about what it was like to grow up in a remote First Nation. Listening to Dwight share some vulnerable parts of his story showed the heart of someone who deeply cares about others. Witnessing the passion and effort he has put into his mission is inspiring. I encourage you to follow along the journey, especially if you're listening around the holidays. And I look forward to hearing how this story impacts you going forward. Dwight, thank you so much for making time to be with me on the podcast and sharing the important work that you're doing. I love looking back at this time of year on everything that has happened. As I mentioned in a previous episode, I look back at my journals, I look back at photos, and now I got to look back in depth at some interviews that I had on the podcast this year. So many incredible people with powerful stories that I believe can truly change so many lives. So thanks to all those who guested on the show. Thank you for listening. And I hope you enjoy listening again or listening for the first time to some of the episodes here. And in the coming year, I already have several episodes that are waiting to launch in January and many more interviews that will be taking place. So stay tuned and also let me know who you would like me to interview, other stories you'd be interested in hearing. I'm so open to it. I hope you have a beautiful rest of 2021. And when you hear from me again, it'll be a brand new year. I'm grateful for you. All the best to you. Big blessings. Thank you so much for being here with me on the Connect podcast. If you like this episode, please share it with someone you think would enjoy it. Also, if you head over to iTunes to leave a review, I'd be so grateful. Let us know what your favorite parts were and what you'd like to hear more of. It will help us have a greater impact, elevating many more people to grow and succeed together. See you next time.